Hello there, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LevDev, and I decided to make this quick kinda video log for Sunday because what they decided to do now is, well, PAX is this weekend, and what they did with PAX is they had the recent reveal for the new Guilds of Ravnica set. They essentially revealed a few cards to just pretty much preview for the next season upcoming up, and we actually got some interesting cards that I do want to give my quick, kind of like 12 cents on. Some of them are really good, some of them are kind of interesting, but I do think, as one you're seeing right off the bat, there's a lot to talk about. But first things first, let's just go left from right. I'm just using Mythic Spoilers site to just go through these real quick. Let's start out from the left with Legion Warbots. It's 2 and a red for a creature goblin soldier with Mentor, which is a new mechanic in Guilds of Ravnica. To actually explain to people who are new to the whole Ravnica set and all its mechanics, basically amounts to this. What we're going to get in Guilds of Ravnica is we're going to get about 5 factions. Now, it's not all the factions in Ravnica. We're actually going to get the other 5 within the next set of this expansion. But essentially, what happens is we're going to have guilds, and guilds are essentially like color pies of red, black, blue, black, white, etc., etc., etc. Sorry for the pause there. That was just kind of a brain fart there. But essentially, what happens is each of these color pairs kind of have a specific guild associated. Red blue is Izzet, red white is Boros, black blue is Demir, green white is Selesnya, and I think I'm forgetting one. Oh, black green Gagari. So I'm sorry, this is completely off script. So if you see me having kind of like brain farts here and there, I apologize in advance. But anyway, now that I got over that, let's actually go for the cards. Legion Warbots, 2 and a red, creature goblin soldier, Mentor. Mentor is a new mechanic in this set, and it's mostly for the Boros faction. It's whenever this creature attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature with lesser power. Honestly, that is a potentially good mechanic if the creatures you get are good, which, we got a good one. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. That token gains haste until end of turn, and attack this combat if able. Now, many people, when they looked at this card, they were just essentially saying right off the bat, wait, this is Rabble Master, isn't it? And yes and no to that. On one hand, I kind of was first looking at it and I was like, oh boy, we got Rabble Master again. The weird thing, though, that makes this card both good and bad is the problem is with Rabble Master originally, the main reason why Rabble Master was really, really good in aggro decks and even some sack decks is because it does get the plus attack boost for each attacking goblin. Legion Warbots doesn't exactly have that. Now, yes, you do technically get a temporary attack boost on one of your minions when you do the Mentor trigger. That is very true. But it's a lot more slower than you usually see, like with Rabble Master and all that, which makes the card kind of interesting. I think this card will see play in aggro decks. The fact that it does generate a token, the token will be attacking, and the Mentor trigger itself will probably see play in that. I can also see this play in Rakdos, kind of red-black sacrifice outlet type decks because generating a token that you can, say, sack for demon catastrophes is nothing to sneeze at. Overall, I need to see more of the set to see the power level of this card, but it is definitely very tempting, and it's making people remember the Rabble Master shenanigans that they had to face during the con standard, so keep your eye on this bugger. Also, keep in mind we do have Goblin War Master in the meta, so yeah, this with Legion Warbots is kind of absurd when you think about it. Other than that, we did got one of the highlight cards they showed off, which is the new Planeswalker, which is Ral Izzet Viceroy. It's a 5 mana, 5 loyalty Planeswalker, free, red and a blue, Izzet colors, and it has free activated abilities, +1. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Interesting. Mine's free. Ral Izzet Victory. Ral Izzet Viceroy deals damage to target creature equal to the total number of instant sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. That is potentially powerful, but I'm going to get to that once we talk about the ultimate. Now, the ultimate is -8, and you get an emblem with whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell. This emblem deals 4 damage to any target, and you draw 2 cards. Wait, what? Boy, are they trying to sell this card. They are trying to sell an Izzet type deck, and it's really tempting. I mean, the problem is this card has a really weird catch. And the catch is, it is competing with a lot of 5-cost walkers that are kind of powerful. Like, the one that people are saying right off the bat is, wait, Teferi is 5 mana. Would I rather play Teferi in a Planeswalker deck or such, or even just play Teferi rather than this? And the thing to keep in mind is, if it's possible to do a red-blue kind of spells deck, which obviously this is a Planeswalkers encouraging that, that's not bad. And also it has 5 loyalty, which makes it very, very hard to kill. I mean, obviously if you're playing this behind, you're in trouble. But if you're playing this ahead, those abilities itself is not really bad. I mean, look at the top 2 cards. It's digging into your deck. That's nothing to sneeze at. Always cards that allow you to dig into your deck is never something to sneeze at. Especially if it feeds cards in the graveyard, which does synergize with some potential abilities such as the -3 ability, but it also synergizes with a mechanic that is within the upcoming set, which we'll get to it once they show the spoiler card that shows the mechanic. You kind of see it on the bottom there, but we'll get to it once we get to it. -3. Dealing damage to target creature equal to the total number of instant sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. Keep in mind, this card, that ability itself is very, very tempting. I mean, it protects itself. I mean, it's not the best self-protection in the world, don't get me wrong, but the fact that it both counts for cards in your graveyard and in exile, that's actually pretty cool. Because there are some cards kind of like with, say, like, for example, Karn's Typical Sundering, or like legendary sorcery spells, or even some legendary spells that exile when you cast them. The fact that Ral Izzet Viceroy, actually, I'm just going to say Ral for short now, just for the sake of this video. The fact that Ral will count those spells for the burn damage that is to a target creature, that's actually not bad. Plus, just the -8 itself. If you could get off with that, Ultimate, you probably won the game. I mean, it depends on your hand, it also depends on various circumstances, but still, that is a really good Ultimate. I mean, the fact that whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, dealing 4 damage and drawing 2 cards, which allows you to draw into more instant sorcery spells, that's scary. This is a very scary card. Now, I don't know if it will see play right off the bat. Really, this card, its playability is going to be dependent on a few things. It's going to be dependent on if we get really good instant sorcery spells that can actually encourage an Izzet archetype like this, or even a multicolor one like with Grixis, or say an other variety of color combinations, since we're going to both have check lands and shock lands, but we'll get to the shock lands once we see them. It's very tempting. Like, I want to say this is really good, but I don't think this is, as I told one of my friends, this is a card that I do want to get, but I don't think I want to pre-order it right off the bat. I think this is a card I want to first see all the spoilers, and I'll probably pick it up like a few weeks after the expansion, or maybe even just if I pull it, cool. I have it in my collection so I can use it for janky brew shenanigans, but it's really going to be dependent on the quality of instant sorcery spells. However, we do get one really good sorcery spell for the Dimir class, aka the Blue-Black Guild, and that is Thought Erasure. It's blue and a black sorcery spell, uncommon, and it has target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. It has an ability called, okay, forgive me, my pronunciation of this could be very bad, so forgive me on this one, but it is Surveyor 1. Now, Severe is a mechanic that's upcoming in the new set, and you essentially are going to get cards that basically have Severe 1, 2, 3, who knows how big the Severe is going to be. But essentially, what it does is you can look at the top card of your library, or look at how many cards you can look at with Severe. And you have a choice of either keeping those on the top in any order, or you can put them in your graveyard. Now, here's something you got to keep in mind. For me, as a card game player in general, one of my main weaknesses is control decks. Like, anybody can tell you who played against me in any matches of Magic during Friday Night Magic or such, I am a really, really bad control player. Like, I kind of get very impulsive. I cast spells right off automatically. You can ask people with experience, they could say that right off the bat. So I decided for this card, I decided to ask many of my friends who I know who are good control players and ask their 2 cents on this card. And most of them are really, really grateful this card is going into rotation. And the main reason why is because the Severe ability synergizes really, really well with Search for Azcanta, which is a mainstay in a majority of control style decks. Plus, also the factor is Severe just can also synergize with graveyard shenanigans. And there's even a card you might want to Severe that is, well, a reprint, but we're going to get to that. But overall, the fact that it targets any non-land card is really good, so this actually can help hate out cards like Planeswalkers, it can hate out cards like very significantly powerful creatures and such. It's pretty much a control player's dream card. Is it perfect? No, but I do think a lot of control players, especially since Esper Control is a popular archetype currently in the meta, will probably consider this potentially main board, but potentially sideboard. Yeah, probably sideboard is probably the most likely aspect for this, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It is definitely a cool card. I'll say that right off the bat. Now, one of the... sorry. That's what you get for messing with a web browser. There we go. Now, we did actually got some legendary creatures, and even a mythic. The mythic creature we got is the Underrealm Lich. A 5 mana 4/3. It's a creature, zombie elf shaman, mythic, so Golgari shenanigans. And if you would draw a card, instead, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Then put one into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Pay 4 life, Underrealm Lich gains indestructible until end of turn, but you have to tap it. Okay, here's something that people need to keep in mind. This card is legitimately Dredge player's dream card. Because remember, it says if you would draw a card. Not at the start of your turn, not at your draw step. In the instance that you will draw a card, you do this ability to look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put one into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. That, for Dredge, is freaking insane. I don't know. I mean, seriously, for Dredge style commander decks, for Dredge style, I can even see some people potentially toying with this in modern. I mean, yeah, 5 costs is a price, don't get me wrong. And it's not like there's any way to reanimate. Oh, wait, yeah, modern has a lot of way to reanimate this creature. And the fact that you can pay for a life to give this indestructibility if you need to use it as a draw engine. I mean, this card is really, really good. It also has potential in Madrafa style decks. I mean, I don't really see any con to this. I mean, the only con is for standard possibility. One of my friends did kind of point this out, and I do have to agree with him. The fact that you do have to tap the creature does make it where it is prone to seal away or seal away like effects. So that could be potentially problematic. But overall, I really like this card. This card might actually make Golgari shenanigans a thing. It will make Reanimator potentially a potential archetype, but mostly this card is just screaming, hey, put me in a dredge deck in Modern, or hey, put me a dredge deck in Commander, oh hey, put this in a Drafa, you're going to have a blast. But I don't know, I need to see the whole set to see how this will play out, but keep your eye on this card. This card might actually see some play. Now, one of my personal favorite cards from the set is Imra Soul of the Accord. It's simply Selesnya colors, which is green and a white. It's an elf cleric. It's a 2/2, so it's a bear. And whenever this creature, aka herself, becomes tapped, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. I really like this card for shenanigans. Now, here's the thing that people need to keep in mind with this card. Whenever it becomes tapped. Now, one of the mechanics we're going to see later in the video when we look at all the cards, there's a mechanic called Convoke. And what Convoke does is you can tap a creature to generate a mana of any type of whatever it can produce, aka since, let's say you tap this for Convoke, so it can produce either green or white mana for the spell of a specific Convoke spell. You can use it as a mana rock, essentially, by tapping the creature down. So essentially, with Convoke spells, then you can create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink, which is synergistic, helps you with blockers. Oh hey, it can also be useful for using that token for a Convoke spell. And what I legitimately adore about this card is the factor that it synergizes potentially pretty well with Mott's Amber early game. I mean, heck, it's a 2-cost legendary. We have now this and also Shauna as early game legendary creatures that we can put on out to make Mott's Amber potentially fast mana for any potentially powerful Convoke spells. Also, the one that this is more me going on speculation on this one. People can correct me in the comments, but I think this is kind of hilarious with Helm of the Host. Because when you read this card, it's whenever this creature becomes tapped, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. So you put Helm of the Host on her, you create a copy of her that's non-legendary, and if I recall correctly, the right way of looking at this is that it's going to check both instances of it when it becomes tapped. So it's going to check the name first, and then what happens is, technically, then you'll create 2 tokens rather than 1. I could be totally wrong on this, so keep that in mind. It could just be when you attack with both of these, you just only get, like, 1 token from each one. But I do think you get double the tokens, but I'm not 100% sure. I could be totally 100% wrong on that. But I still think this is a really good bear. This is a bear to keep your eye out on. I personally love it because I think there's some potentially very janky shenanigans you can do with it in Selesnya. I can't wait to give it a shot. But anyway, let's get on to the other cards. We're going to scroll down. Next, we get another Boros card, which is the Boros Challenger. It's red and white, Boros colors. It's a human soldier. It's a 2/3, and it has Mentor, which we mentioned it before, what Mentor does. But it also has the ability of an activation of 2 and Boros to give the creature itself +1/+1 until end of turn. Personally, I think this is just a decent limited card. It might see some constructed play, I'm not 100% sure on that. But what benefits this card a lot is the fact that the stat buff can help you with mentor triggers. Like, let's say you get a bear out turn 3, you then swing in with this, and then you can wait till turn 4 to swing with this, use the activated ability, and then make that bear have a +1/+1 counter. Or if you generate, like, say, a token, then you can do the mentor trigger and such. This is a card that I think is going to be a lot more playable in Limited than people will give it credit for. I don't think it's absolutely amazing, but I do think this card does have some potential for some shenanigans. Also, that art is actually pretty cool. Like seeing the leaves right over there and the sword behind and the shield and such. I do actually really like this card. I do think you'll see some play in Boros shenanigans. Now we get to the Izzet mechanic, which is, with the card, Quasi Duplicate. It's 1 and 2 blue, sorcery spell. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and it has the mechanic of Jumpstart. Now, what Jumpstart is, it's a mechanic exclusively to kind of like Izzet, And what it basically amounts to is when this card is in your graveyard, you can actually discard a card and pay the original mana cost for the spell to exile it and cast the spell within your graveyard. So, for example, you can cast this spell twice, essentially. Now, Jumpstart as a mechanic itself, there's some people who are kind of down on it, and I was kind of originally because this is, yeah, to many people, this feels like kind of a bad flashback. However, I don't know. The fact that madness is a mechanic within Magic is the thing that's making me keep my eye on Jumpstart spells. I do think Jumpstart spells might be potentially synergistic very well with cards like, Fiery Temper or any other madness spell that you can think of right off the bat. That's something to keep your eye out on. Also, the other thing that does make this card potentially pretty good, at least the mechanic wise, is that it does synergize with Severe actually surprisingly well. You don't want to cast a spell right off the bat, or it's an awkward spell to cast? Oh hey, you can cast it much later by just putting it in your graveyard, give it some time to stir there, and then, oh, you get a creature you want to make a copy of, then cast it in your graveyard, discard a card you don't really want, and such. Now let's take a look at the spell in itself without just going all over in the jumpstart. This spell's just fine. It's technically just 6 mana, create 2 tokens of creatures that you find relevant. That's not bad. I mean, yeah, obviously you want to make sure that's just high value based creatures you want to create a token of. You don't want to obviously create 2 legendary tokens because, well, legendary rule. Enough said on that. But overall, it's a decent spell. I like it. I think you could do some shenanigans with it. I'll probably do some jank with it eventually, but overall, it's not a bad spell to highlight the mechanic. Now, the next spell we got, and this is the one that control players have been telling me they adore. Most of the control players I know say they adore this card, and it's Sinister Sabotage. It's 1 and 2 blue, counter target spell. So it's a cancel. And cancels in themselves are they're cancels, you use them. But what's beneficial is it has Surveyor 1. So, yeah. It's a cancel that allows you to scry. And many control players are loving this card. They love that this is a replacement for Disallow when it rotates out of the meta. And it's pretty synergistic. It synergizes with what they're potentially going to mess with graveyard shenanigans such as Search for Escanta. It also synergizes if they have any powerful, like, let's say if they have any Izzet cards that have Jumpstart on it. Hey, maybe we can have one for later. This card is, and also, hey, you can just keep it on top if it's a relevant card you need. This card, pretty much every control player that I talk to, they like this card. Hold on, you're probably going to see this card played a lot and probably be a little frustrated. Now, these cards haven't been revealed in the past stream, but I'll just get my quick opinions on these. This actually got revealed through a leak a lot earlier, and minus the alternate language, it's a 5 mana sorcery spell that says you return a 1 cost, 2 cost, and 3 cost card from your graveyard onto the battlefield. Is it good? It's potentially very good. It depends on if there's actually any relevant kind of like into the battlefield effect kind of synergies that you would want to use for this type of spell. You can stack that. But really, most people are kind of down on the card because, at least for standard at the very least, because it's one of those where we don't really have any one value base drop that we would mind pulling using this spell, which is Macabre Hatchery, if I remember the name correctly. So, many people are looking at this card and they're just like, I'll play in a commander, I might try it at least at Fringe, Modern. Standard, we really gotta see what ETB effects we're gonna get from this expansion and from the past standard cycles that we will still have in the meta to see if this potentially sees play. It's weird though, the other thing that makes this card a little awkward is once you get to the Gagari mechanics, Gagari's mechanics kind of revolve around wanting creatures in the graveyard to help synergize with some potentially powerful spells. And this is just a really peculiar reanimator spells. Now, don't get me wrong, Gagari does like their reanimation spells. But on the other hand, as we get to later, there is a heavy emphasis on encouraging Gagari to keep creatures in their graveyards. We'll get to it once we get to it, but notice that this is a peculiar card. It'll be interesting to see its play in the meta, but honestly, unless there's some ridiculously powerful ETB strategies, ETB into the battlefield strategies that would not mind being reanimated, or value-based creatures, this card will probably see some fringe play. Now, the Biobots promo, which, for those of you who don't know what a Biobots promo is, what you essentially do is when you buy a bots of Guilds of Ravnica, you get a promo card. And what they're doing now for this, for the future sets in Magic, they're making it where the Biobots promo is an exclusive card where you can't open it from a pack. You have to buy the bots to actually get the card. Now, they try to make it where the power level of the cards are relatively low, and this one is kind of a very low power level card. It's the Impervious Great Worm, 7 mana, 3 green, creature worm, Convoke, which, as we mentioned before, Convoke is your creatures can help cast a spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color, and it's indestructible. It's a 16/16. I think this is going to be a Timmy trap card. I think there are people who are looking at this card and they're like, oh, a big 16/16. That can help me win the game once I actually reach the mana or get the creatures out to pay for the Convoke cast and such and attack, right? The problem is, stats alone does not make a card amazing. Sure, 16/16 is big. Don't get me wrong. But the factor is it doesn't have any evasion, so literally an opponent can block with tokens and not get dealt the 16/16 damage. Now, potentially Jank Brewers like me and other people are kind of thinking of some funny shenanigans with this card, like with FUD being in the meta, thanks to the core set. FUD is a 1 red cost spell that sacrifices a creature and you deal that creature's power to target creature, player, or planeswalker. That is actually kind of funny. I could see some people probably doing some Gruul comedy shenanigans where they try to ramp into this and then play FUD and then deal 16 damage. That can actually be some potential funny shenanigans. I don't think it's enough to make this card amazing, but I do think this is just a fine card to play with, say, in Commander, or maybe in some casual play, but I don't think this is going to see competitive play. Don't worry, guys, this is not the Nexus of Fate. You don't have to worry. But anyway, let's get to the rest of the cards that got revealed during the stream. I'm not going to talk about this card because this got leaked, and really, honestly, it's really hard to read that card. But we're actually going to get to a reprint. And, oh boy, another mispronunciation one, so forgive me. Narcomoeba, I think is how they pronounce this. It's a reprint. It's 1 in a blue. Creature Illusion. 1/1 with flying, which has the ability that if it's put into a graveyard from the library, you may put it onto the battlefield. Now, many people are kind of being salty about this reprint because they are kind of mad that it's rare. And yeah, to be fair, pulling this as a rare in draft is probably going to feel really bad. I mean, unless we get something with Severe and just a payoff for the factor that this creature will go from the graveyard onto the battlefield, kind of like a Prize of Mogam-like card, it does kind of make this card feel a little bit However, I do think this is still decent in draft. It really depends on how many enchantment-like spells we get or how many card ways we can buff up this creature. Yeah, it's kind of one of those reprints that feels a little, it's still a much-needed reprint, don't get me wrong. But many people are still kind of a little bit salty that it is a rare. But I do think this card at least has some potential standard applications. I mean, one thing that people are keen to forget the mind, and I know at first it seems like a nombo, where it's like, wait, you can technically search of as cancel this into your graveyard and then bring it out, but then many people are pointing out, well, don't you want spells in your graveyard at first to actually just activate the search for as counter flip? Yeah, that is potentially a point, but I don't know. I think this is a card that's going to be interesting to see if people have applications for it in Standard. Obviously, the modern implications for Dredge decks, yeah, we know what the dex does. We know the cards that like this card in the potential modern meta and also other Eternal formats. But in Standard, it'll be very interesting to see if this card sees play. I'm not 100% sure just yet, but I really need to see more of the set and even just look at past sets to get my final opinion if this is a powerful card for the expansion. But it'll be very interesting to see if this is actually a powerful draft card. I don't think it's great and limited, but like I said, this is really dependent on what the set is. If the set provides enough incentives or enough payoffs for the factor of what Narcomoeba does, then this card might be something you want to keep an eye out for. But still, a good reprint is a good reprint, so not much to say on that. One card, though, that is potentially very scary is the Necrotic Wound. It's a black mana, instant, uncommon, undergrowth. Target creature gets negative X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Boy, this card is good. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a weird kill spell. Like, this spell is mostly very synergistic in graveyard shenanigans decks, which they are encouraging that archetype. They are encouraging the zombie archetypes. They are encouraging ways of putting cards into your graveyard. I mean, Stitcher Supplier in the core set just puts free cards automatically into your graveyard. And then I think it also does it when it dies. I don't think it does it when it dies, but I'm not 100% sure. Let me put it like this. Black are going to have ways to put a lot of cards into their graveyards relatively quick. So if you can make it where this card is just one black mana, give a creature negative free, and then it exiles it, this is just a great tool card to help against mirror matches in general. It also helps against indestructible creatures if we see any, or ways to give creatures indestructible because it's negative X being instead of being destroy target creature. And also, it's just really good late game as well because it gets better because you'll probably get more creatures into your graveyard and it will probably target higher cost creatures. Yeah, this card is a really good removal spell in black. I mean, yeah, is it Fatal Push? No. But is it a good replacement for Fatal Push? In the right decks, this card is nuts. Don't underestimate this card. This card is going to make some people's lives very obnoxious. Anyway, the last new card they revealed was the Conclave Tribunal. It's free and white for an enchantment with Convoke, which is nice. So you can pretty much use your creatures to pay for the spell. And it has the ability that when it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Conclave Tribunal leaves the battlefield. So this essentially is an Oblivion Ring that can't target a that pretty much will target any non-land permanent. Now, is this cast out? No. I mean, the factor that makes this card potentially less powerful than other options is the factor that it doesn't have flash. Now, on the other hand, cast out's rotating out, and is this a decent replacement? I would say yes. And the reason why is because the Convoke ability in itself. The fact that you can use your creatures as a way to help cast this spell a lot faster than you normally would is nothing to sneeze at. Because mostly what people would do is sometimes they keep creatures for blockers, and they block a significant threat, or something that will... Essentially, it uses your creatures for what you would usually use in Magic in general, too, as a way to remove resources that are potentially problematic that your opponent produce when they play the game. An annoying planeswalker? Hey, Oblivion Ring. Is there an annoying creature that you don't really want to have to block? Hey, Oblivion Ring. And the fact that you can use your creatures to protect them, and also there's stuff with Convoke that synergize, oh, say, like this card, which then gives you additional synergies to help support the Convoke archetype. Yeah, I do think this card's going to see some play. Is it like as good as other Oblivion Ring cards that we're still going to have within the standard rotation? Absolutely not. I mean, we still have like Ixalan's Binding. We even have. Actually, no. Ixalan's Binding, I think it's the only one. Oh no, Hieromancer's Cage. We're also going to get Hieromancer's Cage. Okay, to be fair, Conclave Tribunal is a better Hieromancer's Cage. It's kind of like a. If we kind of like go into a podium like of Oblivion Ring spells that are still going to be in standard, Ixalan's Binding will probably be on the top. Conclave Tribunal will be second place, and Hieromancer's Cage just kind of goes into third place. But still, I like this card. I do think it will see some play. I do like its potential applications in token deck as just a cheap way to remove a problematic card that you're playing against. It's just a good card. Plus, also the Seth McKinnon art is gorgeous. I mean, seriously. I'm probably just going to put this in my Onomatu deck just because of the art alone. Anyway, now the last card set of cards, more specifically, that got revealed is another reprint. And it's one that people were hoping and hoping and hoping that Wizards was going to provide. And thank God they provide them. And that is the fetch lands. Or not, wait, blah! Yeah. Doing this at 11 o'clock at night while having brain farts was probably not the best idea in the world. No, it's the lands that are in Ravnica, the shock lands. They synergize well with fetch lands, but no, we got shock lands. And boy, did these need reprinted. You do not have any idea. We needed these cards. I mean, what now? For people who are not new to this or new to Ravnica in general, what shock lands are they're essentially multicolored lands that are usually in the rare cycle that essentially have the ability of being multiple types, like Mountain to Plains, and they enter the battlefield tapped unless you pay 2 life. If you pay 2 life, then hey, they enter in untap. They're very powerful cards. These cards see play in multiple formats. It sees play in Commander, it sees play in Modern, it even sees play in Eternal formats like Legacy and Vintage. And that's because, and that's what mostly what I had the brain fart over, is because these can be fetched by fetch lands, which makes this seriously really good lands. Now, for this set, we're going to get the shock lands from the factions that are within the set, so we're going to get Boros, which is Mountains and Plains, Steam Vents, which is Island and a Mountain, Watery Grave, which is Island and Swamp, and Overgloom Tomb, which is Swamp and a Forest. Now, one thing to also keep in mind, since we do have Shocklands coming back into Standard, this also means we also currently in Standard have the check lands, which for those who don't know, check lands like say Sun Petal Glove are cards that says they enter the battlefield tap unless you control a certain land. Like Sun Petal Grove, for example, it enters the battlefield tap unless you control, say, a forest or a plain. Oh yeah, and also Temple Garden. Forest is a plain. So, for example, you can play this on turn 1. If you want to play it untapped, you can, and then play a 1-drop. If you don't, you can put this in tap, no sweat. And then let's say you have a Sun Petal Grove, which is a check land into your hand. Well, hey, that land comes in untapped thanks to Temple Garden. And honestly, many people are so grateful that these cards exist, that they got reprinted. This is great for new Commander players that have hard time getting these cards because of the price, because let's be frank, the price on these can sometimes be ridiculous. I mean, Steam Vent prices is freaking absurd in some places. Yeah, this is pretty much, people are going to probably pick this up just so that they can get the amount of lands they need for their Commander decks of these, and also if they're playing these in Modern. Yeah, people are so grateful these got reprinted. Like, some people were flipping the coin on predictions of whether or not they were going to get reprinted or not. But the fact that they are is just great news. Plus, the art on all of them is really good. I mean, Temple Gardens with the fall season setting is really good. The Overgrown Tomb looks very haunting. Watery Grave just is very spooky. The steam vents, sure, we don't see any steam, but just all the lightning everywhere is really nice. And Sacred Foundry is actually very nice, kind of. It's kind of one of those scenes you don't really expect from Boros. It's kind of like very dark and such, and just it feels like people are getting ready for, like, say, a tribunal or something. It's oh wait, you will not be trained here. You will be for. Oh, I get it now. It's like they're in a forgery, which actually makes sense with Boros and such. Okay, that was a lost train of thought there. But overall, that's all the cards they revealed so far. Tell me what you think about the cards in the comments below. And honestly, I'm probably just going to take a nap and just get ready for the shenanigans that is the spoiler season. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to go about with these videos because it's going to be a little bit tricky. But I'll see if I can just, like, maybe every Sunday just talk about the cards they revealed so far. I am planning to try to do a set review for this set, like I try to do with the core set. It's still going to be tricky, especially with the new job and such, but I will try my best. And it'll just be, this looks like a fun set. I can't wait to take a look at the cards and just see what potential brewing shenanigans there are with it. Overall, though, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LevDev, signing out, and I hope you all have a lovely day. Oh,